a vengeful spirit that seeks to enact justice and revenge to his so-called friends. A person who was left to rot and be washed away by the river stream of time. Though the story wouldn't end with the death of Brandon. Rather, the story starts with this tainted creature who wears the skin of Mario. But before I describe the story of SuperMario.EXE, I first have to delve into another character by the name of Dario. I should mention this here, but SuperMario.EXE isn't Mario.EXE made by Cruel Rash, and I want to put that at the beginning of the video. Perhaps we'll talk about Cruel Rashes another day. But this is instead a replacement for Dario. Allow me to explain. Dario found his popularity primarily through a Let's Play by Luigikid, or at least that's where I know it from. His first game was absolutely horrendous, being a complete copy of the original Sonic.EXE game, but honestly, somehow worse. And I'm not saying the original Sonic.EXE game was anything good, but this is just... wow. They just took some assets, did a little bit of coloring, and why the hell is Sonic right there? Anyway, the creator of the character was made by Albert Games, otherwise known as 2002 ABC Dario. While there isn't a wiki page to our good friend Dario here, I was able to see his lore along with his full design. For those curious, the story is, well, it's not great. In the first chapter, it just says that Dario was bullied and was killed by being pushed down a flight of stairs. The three bullies would be turned into different Mario characters, and thusly the torment would begin. As you can see here, Dario has a sword. This could be a mistranslation. It was originally in Spanish, but I believe this sword's name is Swordy. Now, I think it's because of this absurdity. The story and game actually took off in the earlier days of creepypastas, as a lot of creepypastas were just bad or shocking. And I'm not saying that it was a super popular game or story, though Dario definitely left behind an interesting legacy. It is seeing new life. What do I mean by that? Well, let's move on to what this video is really about. This is SuperMario.EXE. I believe he was meant to be a reboot for Dario at first, but is now his standalone thing. As for what happened to Dario, well, he passed away due to a fatal accident. That's right, this is actually canonical. Zero was telling me that he wanted the character to go out in a comedic way because that's what this character was treated as for the longest time, and for good reason. Thusly, SuperMario.EXE is placed upon the timeline and replaces Dario. So it's no longer the reboot, rather a replacement on the timeline. So that would technically make SuperMario.EXE the first Mario.EXE. And that's the key takeaway here. And let me tell you now, this character is a major improvement and is handled a lot better in my opinion. With this character comes an entirely new story, with aspects of Dario sprinkled in. There's even going to be a game released, but I'll be talking about that a little later in the video. For now, let's delve into the story of how one accident changed the lives of 4 people forever. Brandon was often referred to as the quiet kid, and for that reason, he had a hard time socializing. He found himself unable to fit in among his peers, and whenever he tried to open up about his interest, the conversation was cut short as the topic at hand was often perceived as childish. For this reason, Brandon deemed he wouldn't be able to make friends. But one thing was for certain. He loved video games, but more than that, he loved Super Mario. Being outcasted and isolated, he turned to Super Mario to give him comfort. It was something he could always rely on to give him joy. And in his later years of high school, he started to learn how to code. With this newfound talent, Brandon would begin to work on a fan game for his favorite series. Though things were going good for him when it came to coding and Mario, his school life suffered quite a bit, being the target for ongoing bullying. Still, there was a silver lining, a trail that may lead him to happiness. Brandon caught the attention of a small group, their names being John Bennett, Ashley Brown, and Luna Sinclair. John would show Brandon a secret even he was unaware of, but Brandon was skeptical of the group's kindness. The group assured him that they weren't going to bully him like the others did, and much to his surprise, they didn't. John bonded with Brandon especially as they both shared their love for Nintendo games. Brandon got along with the group too, sharing other common interests like how much Brandon loved to bike and go up trails. With these common interests, Brandon finally had people who were like-minded. People who would make him feel as if he wasn't alone, that no matter how much bullying he endured, he had friends now. Friends who would listen to him gush about what he loved, and they would do the same. Brandon wasn't alone anymore, but in time, he would wish this wouldn't be the case. A week after their initial meeting, the four gathered together at John's house to hang out. Brandon spoke up about his game's progress and how he had finished it, but needed playtesters. Luckily, and coincidentally, he had brought a copy with him that had a port of the game, turning it over to John. John agreed to play it, but instead of playing it right then and there, he noticed that the sun was going down and wanted to do a bit of bike trailing beforehand. A little bit of friendly competition and race through the neighborhood and through smaller hills, until John wanted to raise the stakes. John said he would only play Brandon's game if he could beat him in a race. It is worth noting that this wouldn't be just any race, but through a rather steep mountain. Brandon, being overwhelmed with excitement to show somebody else what he had been working on for hours on end, accepts this challenge. And thusly, it began. The race continued, and though it seemed neck and neck for a while, it seemed that Brandon was pulling ahead. At first, it was friendly competition. It quickly developed into something different, something sinister. Losing in front of his friends, losing to someone with less of a reputation, losing again in general. Well, John couldn't have that. He was the same as Brandon. He was bullied at one point too. And he wouldn't let it happen again. He wouldn't create the chance. And though it would be something so small, in the moment, John knew what he had to do. His pride took over his body, and he veered directly into the back of Brandon's bike. The goal was relatively harmless. Just knock him off his balance and gain the lead. That's not what happened. John failed to consider they were on a narrow bridge, and underneath them, a steep drop. Once the hit connected, Brandon lost his balance and fell off his bike. A scream of terror could be heard as he plummeted straight down to the depths. And then, nothing else. John stopped. The final cries of his friend made him realize what he had done. Luna and Ashley made their way over, asking what happened, and John told them simply he fell. And as the police were investigating, they all came to the conclusion they would lie. Brandon had gone home early that day. Yeah, that's what happened, and we never heard from him again. And with that, Brandon's story came to an end. Or so that's what they say. Brandon awoke to something bizarre. He felt like he was in immense pain, like his body had been mangled. A man stood in front of him, a man dressed in red. They abandoned you. Instead of taking responsibility, they chose to protect themselves. They moved on. And no one is coming for you. I'm sorry, Brandon. You didn't deserve this. It isn't fair to be cast away like that, left to die alone. But I'm here to make things right. I can give you another chance. A new life. A life where you'll never be ignored, never be ridiculed, never be helpless again. They all hurt you. Not just John. Not just the girls. Everyone. They treated you like you didn't matter. So tell me, Brendan, why should you do right by people who never do right by you? And thus, a deal was about to be made. Brandon found himself in a familiar place. It appeared to be his game. The man in the red suit stood beside him. In this world, you'll have all the power you could ever want, and get the revenge you seek. But, in return, you give me your soul. And this was the deal that Brandon made with the man in the red suit. Though there would be an additional stipulation. Brandon could actually die should the group reach the end of the level. And if they're able to access the final axe, they can wipe Brandon from existence. Though with how much power had been granted to Brandon, it was a deal he couldn't refuse. Ah, good. Well, in that case, you have fun, Brandon, until we meet again. It would be some time before Brandon would be able to enact his revenge. Fast forwarding to 2004. The friend group was about to graduate high school, and with the time they had left, they would spend it together. John invited them over to his house as he did many times before, and while looking for games to play, he came across one that was familiar. A game they were supposed to play a long time ago. A game made by Brandon titled Super Mario. John exclaimed to the group he felt obligated to see what Brandon made, and they all agreed. The group booted up the game, only to find something truly unexpected.
Words cannot describe how excited I am to see all of you again. You all look so different compared to when we last met. So much a change physically, yet spiritually, I know you're all the same. I know why you're here. You're not here out of grief or sympathy. That's not in your nature. You came here for closure. You came here to bury the hatchet and walk away. None of you have a say in walking away. Each and every one of you are responsible for what happened. You don't deserve closure! Until you've rightfully atoned for your actions. And I will make sure that you do. With all being said, let's make this reunion a proper one. Woohoo!
And that is what leads us to the game. The game is still in development, but it's going to be releasing a demo soon. We've heard stories like this before, but the way this is handled and the work that's going into it is something I am excited to see. A quick shout out to Zero for making the thumbnail of the video and providing me with lore, along with anything else I needed for the character. The link to Zero's team will be down in the description below, along with where you can follow the project. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Until next time, stay freaky!